Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "Neighbor built a huge treehouse on my inherited property illegally and claimed he owns my land." There is a piece of land that has been in my family for generations. I think it used to be a farm, but after a while it got used for other things. At this point it is mostly empty land and big old trees. My grandfather owned it, and when he passed away, the land was given to me. Technically to my parents, but they did not want to move from where they are living now. Instead, I got to be the lucky one and got the land, where I moved in with my wife. I have the best memories of this place and hanging out with my grandfather. When we moved in, we decided to take a look around the whole plot of land, since I've not been there in quite a while. In an area of the land that was a little more tree dense than the others, I saw a treehouse built in a big oak. This surprised me because I was the only grandchild he had, and I outgrew the age for a treehouse many years ago. This was not from my childhood either, because it looked new and, in my opinion, way too fancy. This treehouse had actual glass windows and what looked like carpeting. I had no idea who built this, but I knew for sure that it was not my grandfather. I waited around until a woman showed up with her 2 kids, and they ran up to the treehouse. She glared at me before speaking. "Woman, what are you doing here? Coming to watch my kids play like some kind of creeper? Get the hell off my property before I have you sent to jail." Me? Actually, I own the property and wanted to know why there was a random treehouse built here without my permission. "Woman, nobody owns this property. It is free, so me and my husband built my kids a wonderful treehouse." Me? I have proof it is my property and you need to remove it. She just glared at me again and finally told her kids that they had to leave because the creepy man wants to stop you from having fun. Now, for this treehouse, there are a couple of things that I want to say regarding why I don't want it there. It is a huge property and we really don't need the entire thing. However, if those kids get hurt playing on our property and we let it happen, we could be responsible. And trust me, the mother would change her story about us letting her kids play and sue me in a heartbeat. The other thing is, because after being in our new home only a week, we heard some pretty famous things about those neighbors. Where we live, it is broken up into 2 parts. The area that is all old farms and families that are more on the living wage side of things. Then there is the other half, which is new homes full of rich snobs. They decided that the poorer kids were not allowed to play in the treehouse, even though she clearly said before that it was free and open property. Her story changed like this every time someone tried to figure out what was going on. Because of both of these reasons, I decided to have the treehouse removed from my property. I got the permit and even made sure that the stuff inside of the treehouse got sent back to the rightful owner. The only thing that really got dumped was the lumber used to build the thing. As you can probably guess, the mother was beyond angry and actually said that she was going to call the cops on me for destruction of property. I had no reason to worry because I had the permit and proof that it was on my property from when I had it removed. She did call them and they told her the same thing, and that I had every right to remove it. I thought for a long time how I could do something to get revenge on this woman. I really only like revenge when it is something good that just so happens to screw over the a-holes. After a while, I think I finally figured out the best way to do this. Do you remember before when I said the land was far too big for us to use all of it? Well, we ended up working with the town to donate a piece of our land to have it turned into a community playground for all of the kids to enjoy. We wanted to do it through the town, so we did not need to worry about getting sued or anything. The kids loved the playground and most of the parents in my part of the community thanked us so much. We were given a lot of food and so many baked goods from parents that we were happy their kids could have a place to play without worrying about being safe. Also not worrying about the rich, snobby kids causing them trouble and excluding them. There was one thing that I felt the playground needed in order to be perfect for the kids. I even donated the time to build it myself since I am licensed as a contractor. In the playground was one of the big oak trees, and you can probably guess what I did with it. If you guessed I built a treehouse, then you would be right. Of course, mine was very different from the one that neighbor ended up building for her kids. This one was like a real treehouse and not trying to turn the outdoors into the indoors. It was simple, sure, but all of the kids liked it and would climb up and try to see how far they could see from the windows. The town even held a fun day when all the kids could come and help paint the treehouse together. It ended up looking like a disaster, but what you would expect kids to do. As for neighbor, she was furious all of this was going on and went to the town many times to try and get rid of the public park. She claims that when she tried to do the same thing, I was allowed to have hers destroyed. It was explained to her again that the issue was that she built a private treehouse on someone else's property while the park was now on town property officially. I have no idea if she understood and pretended not to, or if she was actually that stupid. I also don't know to this day if she understood, but she never tried to build on my land again. As for her kids, I have not once seen them at the playground with all the other kids. Even some of the kids from their social circle would show up. To a kid, a playground is not just a playground. Kids are kids, and it does not matter if you are from one of the farms or one of the fancy new homes. I think that I got pretty good revenge though, because in the end, the happier everyone else was, the angrier she got. Some people say that the best kind of revenge is doing to the person exactly what they did to you, or even doing something worse. The way my grandfather taught me though was to be such a good neighbor that it gets them mad. He might be gone, but his advice is still golden to this day. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you still enjoy the stories about entitled crazy neighbors, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we are very close to actually 70,000 subscribers, and it would be awesome if we could reach that. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled, I'm not cleaning, I live here. So this happened on a Saturday morning. I live in a nice brand new apartment. It is great, and the few neighbors I have met have been pretty chill, with a few exceptions. Earlier in the week, some new neighbors moved into one of the apartments. Their movers left the front door open, and while they were moving furniture in, a whole bunch of dead leaves from outside blew into the hallway. It was a huge mess. My apartment is literally the first door once you enter the building, and every time I've come home since I've been walking on dead leaves. We do have cleaners who come in about once or twice a week to clean the common areas, but Saturday morning as I was cleaning my apartment, I decided to pop outside and sweep up some of the leaves. I decided to leave most of them for the cleaners and only focus on the ones that were between the entrance and my door and a few leaves around there. Figured it is not my job to clean the whole place, and I'd just take care of the leaves that were bothering me. Well, one of my neighbors saw me sweeping up in my PJs with bedhead and decided I was one of the cleaners. She saw that I was tying up my garbage bag and folding up my broom and dustpan. They sort of fold together for compact storage. Crazy woman, hey, you're not done. Why are you getting ready to leave? Me, hi, I'm done. I was only sweeping the place between the hallway and my apartment. CB, well, that's just lazy. Do your job and sweep the rest of the hallway. It's been filthy for days. Me, yeah, I know, it's been filthy. That's why I decided to clean the spot between the front door and my door. CB, you live here? So why do you only clean once or twice a week? If you live here, you should be cleaning every day. Stop being so lazy. Me? Ma'am, I'm not a cleaner. I'm a resident. The mess in the hallway bothered me, so I cleaned the part that was annoying me. If the rest of it bothers you, then clean it yourself. CB, how dare you? I'm going to call corporate and have you fired and thrown out of this building. Me? Ma'am, I own this apartment and I own my own business. I don't work for our apartment's body corp organization, and I'm not a cleaner. I live here, the mess bothered me, so I cleaned it. If the rest of the mess bothers you, then clean it. I'm not your servant and I'm not going to do it for you. CB, well then why are you cleaning the hallway? You think I'm stupid? No one would clean the hallway unless they're getting paid. Me, or unless they don't want to track dead leaves into their home every time they get back. CB, well, if you're doing this on your own, you won't mind sweeping up the rest of the hall, so do it. Me? Yeah, no. Had you asked me politely, I might have considered it. But after this exchange, you can either do it yourself or wait for the cleaners to come do it. I'm gonna go back inside and continue cleaning my place. Nice meeting you, though. I walked in and she started banging on my door for a while, but I just threw some Disturbed on my stereo and let David Drayman drown out the witch's knocks. It did not end well though. I went out later to throw away my trash in the dumpster downstairs. The crazy witch, I suspect did not actually see her, but who else would it be, had swept all the leaves in front of my door. So I grabbed my trusty broom and swept them all further down the hall to her. I have a feeling we are gonna be playing this game until the cleaners show up, and maybe I'll borrow my buddy's leaf blower and just rev it up outside her door. It's pretty loud. And the next one is titled The Worst Neighbor Karen. This happened just last night, so it is still fresh in my mind. It was Friday night, me and my roommates got super high and then realized that we were out of food. Well, high people food like fruit roll-ups, gushers, popcorn, and so we did a rundown to the Duane Reade a few blocks down. For those outside of Manhattan, that store is Walgreens, just New York City style. Now, location is important. We live just off of Park Avenue, yes, bougie as F, but me and my roommates live in the crappiest walk-up on the block. We are on the 3rd floor, with the 1st floor having a crappy Irish pub and the 2nd floor having a psychic and a happy ending Korean spa, which by the way only opens after 7 PM. So, not exactly ballers, but most of our neighbors are. And the people in the neighborhood after working hours are almost all exclusively rich white people. Now, back to me being really high. It is cold, so before me and my roommates head out, I change into my favorite onesie. My neighbor Tororo onesie. And we walk out to the store a few blocks down. Then we get there, and me being super high, I am super indecisive and I am staring at a lot of fruit snacks. I take one and then I put it back and then I take another and then put that one back, and for like 10 minutes. Then a Karen comes around. I did not notice her. I was bent down, butt out with my tail in the air. "Excuse me," she says loudly, but I ignore her because I'm choosing food. She clears her throat again and says, "Excuse me, stop what you're doing. I need your help." Me, okay, then go find it. Karen, well, you work here, so you can help. Me trying to be polite and hide the fact that I'm super high. No I don't? What gave you that idea? I'm not even in uniform. And also, this is Duane Reade, a corporate convenience store. Every worker has to wear a uniform to prevent mishaps like these from happening. Karen, well, you're My roommate Freddy shows up out of nowhere and goes, "Because you're black." And well, this part of town I guess has not figured out that POC can live here too without being the help. Karen then turns bright red and then runs out of the store. And then I start dying of laughter. I mean, of all the people that would not be working right now, I'm pretty sure I would be one of them, especially with my Tororo onesie. All's well that ends well though. I got my snacks and even went next door to McDonald's and got a milkshake and fries. The machine was not broken for once. And then this morning on my jog walk around the block, who did I run into but Karen? I gave her a nice smile and wave. She did not return it. The next one is titled, "Yep, I must totally be the landlord, dude." My neighbors were moving out of the house they had been renting next to me for the last 2 years, and while I was sad to see them go, I completely understood that they were fed up with the condition of the house and the landlord's dismissiveness to their complaints. They took on far more home improvement and maintenance than they should have to be responsible for, some of which I helped them with as we are all friends. After they had vacated and the house was on the market, I was bombarded with all manners of questions from potential buyers and realtors whenever I was outside, usually in the vein of, "How recently was the roof replaced?" and questions about flooding. Mostly I was able to answer and did so pleasantly, mostly. This one realtor though, I will call him Ted because he looked like Ted Danson from The Good Place anyway. Ted catches me going out to check my mail one afternoon after a long night of taste testing my bourbon to make sure it was still good. Ted darts across the lawn to me and starts firing off some pretty rude questions, like,
"Why didn't the previous tenants take care of this place? It's a real dump inside. Were they crackheads? Who installed that washing machine? Why did they leave it so dirty?"
"Okay, Ted, because I really needed this right now." But again, always try to be polite. I tell Ted, as far as I knew, no, the previous neighbors were not crackheads and they actually put in more than their fair share of the upkeep. Apparently, that was not sufficient for mighty Ted.
"Well, what about the washing machine and the track lighting? Was that done by a professional?"
At this point, I'm getting pretty close to being done with this whole affair. "I don't know, Ted. I've been living in this house over here and not the one you're trying to sell." "Ted, but surely you would know something about that." "No, dude, I'm not the landlord or the owner of that property, so yeah." "Well, did you at least see some contractors over here doing any work?" Me having completely lost it with this clown. Are we done? Can I go back inside my house now? I don't know. Ted looked pretty taken aback, but honestly, if he had a shred of self-awareness, I would not have yelled at him. His clients looked embarrassed, and who could blame them? Great way to meet the neighbors, by having your realtor badger them with dumb questions. And the next one is titled Divorce Housing Shenanigans. My ex and I married quickly. We were not too young, but we were young enough to be a little bit foolish. It was the best thing ever to happen to either of us, and it stayed that way, for me at least. She fell out of love with me, and the months-long process that led up to the divorce was excruciating. Luckily for her, her sister-in-law was the premier local family law divorce attorney for women, and of course her side of the case was handled pro bono. Neither of us really made much money, so I couldn't afford my own lawyer, and so I decided that it was just easier to cut my losses and give her the entire house that we bought together. I took some furniture that I brought to the marriage and anything that was obviously otherwise mine, but gave her literally everything else. I moved back in with my old roommate. Everything was fine for a few months, but old what's-her-name eventually wanted to meet and hash out some details. It turns out she was having a hard time paying the mortgage on her own and wanted me to pay half. Even though she wanted the divorce, her name was the only one on the title. I had given her my half of the rights to the house. I was flabbergasted. I suggested that she get a roommate, but
she didn't want someone else living there.
I told her that I couldn't afford my rent plus half of her mortgage. She mentioned that I had signed on as a co-guarantor of the mortgage, and I had to. She did not want to make it an unpleasant part of our divorce settlement. I left our meeting absolutely screwed up. But after a drink or several, I had a realization. It was a risky gamble, but I knew her well enough to hope that it would work. I had lunch with her again and agreed that I could pay half of the mortgage, but she would have to help me move back in. Moving in? Absolutely. I definitely couldn't afford to pay her and pay rent somewhere else, and there had never been any threat of violence between us, and my driver's license still listed our house as my legal residence, so at this point there was nothing stopping me from walking right back in the door and setting myself up in the guest bedroom. We could eventually work out a polite arrangement for evenings when I might bring home a new romantic interest, so would she want me to move in immediately and prorate this month or wait until next month? Her jaw flapped a few times and she said that she would have to consult with her lawyer, but that was the end of it. She dropped the issue and never asked for anything more. I still gave her a house just to get myself out from underneath her, but it was worth it. Park in our disabled spot, enjoy selling your home. So, my little sister, who is the sweetest girl in the world, is 12 years old but cannot walk or communicate. Her mental age is around 6 months. She obviously cannot attend a regular school, but since we live in a big city, there is a wonderful school for kids like her. Even though we don't own a car, since we don't need one, we got the city to put up signs in front of our house designating a 4-meter spot for wheelchair pickup and drop off for her school bus every morning and afternoon. The signs went up perhaps 2 years ago, and after the first week we never really had any issues since most of our neighbors are wonderful and totally understanding of our designated spot. For some context, we live in a perhaps poorer community, though we are well off. But in our 9 years here, we have had nothing but great interactions with everyone here. Sadly, the neighborhood is gentrifying and we are getting more self-centered people with their Mercedes-Benz or Audis honking while my sister gets loaded onto her school bus, which takes around 4 minutes but blocks our little street. This really pisses us off, as well as the other sane people that witness it. Naively, we thought this would be the extent of our unpleasant interactions. In September, we woke up like on any other Monday morning to find a shiny BMW parked in our disabled spot. It was not just partially in it, it was positioned perfectly to take up the entire spot. To make things worse, there were about a dozen open spots on the block, and it is not like they were all vacated that morning, since we wake up at 6 AM. We were baffled. I had seen this car many times since last July, and it was definitely the same car, since there are not many Burgundy sports cars in our neighborhood. It was usually parked about 20 meters south on our street, so we knew it belonged to a neighbor a few doors down. We did all the basics in this type of situation. We took a picture, took down the license plate and called the police to report it. The cops came by within the hour and wrote a big fat ticket. I believe it was for $700, but don't quote me on it. Anyways, it was a significant amount. At around noon, a smug, angry guy came knocking on my door. I had the day off from school and was home on my own. It was obvious that it was the owner of the car, so I made a quick decision to record the conversation, or screaming match, on my phone. I opened the door and before I could say a thing, the douche lays into me. I'm a 16-year-old guy and he is in his mid-40s, midlife crisis maybe. He accuses me of all things ranging from putting up those signs this morning to frame him to being racist. He was East Asian, I believe, but we have a really diverse community. He goes on to say that disabled spots should not even be a thing, that it is always empty, totally shooting himself in the foot based on his previous comments, that we should pay for his undeserved ticket, that it is not even an inconvenience since the spot next to his was free and my sister could just get on the bus from there. Once he finished, I said okay and shut the door on his furious face. He rang the doorbell another 5 times before storming off. To my satisfaction, the recording caught everything fairly clearly. In the evening, I told my parents what had happened and gave my dad a copy of the recording. We have a pretty tight-knit community for the most part, and there is a neighborhood Facebook group with around 3,000 members. My dad decided to post a summary of what had happened along with the recording and a picture of the car in our spot on the page. There was immediate uproar with people saying they would fight back or whatever. We were humbled by the feeling that our community was standing up for us, but we did not think anything would come of it. The next day I leave the house to go to school and walk by the guy's car, back in his normal spot, and notice that the front right tire was deflated. Upon closer inspection it was slashed. As I said, our community is tight-knit, but I cannot say I expected anything like this to happen. The guy must have seen the Facebook post because he did not come back to our house to complain or accuse us of anything. The following weeks were sweet. Whenever I saw him in public, people would go up to him and remind him that he was a crappy human being. A bit harsh in my opinion, but they were not my words. In November, his house had a for sale sign in the window. The house market had also gone down by a bit. I'm always kind of curious about how much houses similar to ours are selling for compared to how much we paid for ours in 2010, so I knew what he paid for it in July. Once I saw the for sale sign, I rushed home and checked the local house listings, and lo and behold, he was selling for $90,000 less than what it was going for in July. He really wanted to get out of our neighborhood. While his crime was not nearly worth $90K, I must say that I don't feel bad. Worst case scenario, he sells that obnoxious car of his, which would easily cover the lost money. Let's just say that we have not had a single car parked in my sister's spot since. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.